All right, here he is.
So I want to tell you a little story about the first time we were in the same situation.
Okay.
We didn't meet, but I don't know if you remember, Jack and Jill had a party, or you do remember, at the Copa.
Yeah.
You do remember.
Yes.
And the Cosby Show, I think it was in the third season. I think we were juniors. We're about the same age.
Yeah.
We were juniors in high school.
Yeah.
And Cosby Show was hot like fish grease. So you're like the most famous young black man in America, right? And the party's popping, and you walk in, and the dance floor was like below the main area, right? So you had to take like four steps down to get into the. And I remember like, yo, Malcolm-Jamal Warner's here. Like, where? Like, you came in surrounded by a ton of people, walked on the dance floor with like arms out wide, like, yo, the man is here, like dancing before you got there. And like, as soon as you got to the dance floor, it's like everybody was dancing with you. All the girls were paying attention. All the dudes were paying attention. Like, yo, Malcolm's in the house, oh shit. And I'm there, like, okay, cool. Well, like, because I rock with dude. Because Theo was the man. You were cool. But, it's like, okay, the party now belongs to him because he's the fucking man. And over in the other corner was Tempest Bledsoe, right? Like,
Oh, wow.
Just off by herself.
Oh, that was a different Jack and Jill party that we crashed.
So I'm like, yo, I'm going to go say what's up to her.
Oh, wow.
So I went over to her, I got my little swag on, and I went up to her like, hi, how are you? Would you like to dance? And very nicely, she said no. And I'm like, wow, I feel like super small because she dissed me, and he's over here like everybody cares about what he's doing.
Oh, wow.
Like, okay, so this is how this is going down. All right, cool.
That's funny. That's funny. I had my buddy Claude Brooks, actor, he's producer, TV producer now, but we used to go to professional children's school,
right? And
so we used to talk about how when we got older, we're talking about how me and Claude were the hardest kids at professional children's school. Like, we were so hard, we crashed Jack and Jill parties.
Oh my God, they wanted you there.
That's hilarious.
There's no crashing. Yeah. Like, please come in. We love you. But I mean, that time was hot for you, right? Everyone loved you, right? I mean, like it must have been just a beautiful time to be you.
It was, and to be in New York, and to because the show was shot in New York, and just the whole New York vibe. Like I was saying before we started. It's very different growing up on TV in LA.
Sure.
Like, I'm so glad that's not my experience.
Okay.
When we first started shooting in the first couple of seasons, we were in Brooklyn, Avenue M and East 14th Street. The studio didn't have a commissary, so at lunch we had to go out and get our food. And then when we moved over to Kaufman Astoria, their commissary was whack. And since we were used to going out and getting our food, we go out and get our food. So there was something really beautiful about being in New York and not in a Hollywood bubble, right? So, and the beautiful thing about New York, which occurred to me even as a kid, was, wow, no matter what your socioeconomic status is, no matter where you live, you walk through New York, you're facing realities daily.
Yeah.
And I think that had a really profound impact on all of us growing up on the show, because we weren't in LA where our best friend was on the stage, next door on their own show. We were real life. Yeah.
So tell me how that played out, that you're in real life. As you're a superstar.
Yeah. Right. It gave me it allowed me to be this, I don't think star, but it allowed me to be famous, and enjoy everything that came along with it. but because of what the show represented, I understood what the show represented. I understood the impact of what that show was doing, to the culture, for the culture. So when I would walk through the world, I knew that I was not just representing my mother and my father, but I was also representing the show and what the show stood for.
So does that mean you felt like, I got to stay on the straight and narrow?
Not the straight and narrow, but I got to keep my shit on the low, right? And I can't be a knucklehead. And because we're in New York and there weren't other shows shooting in New York, all my friends were real friends.
Right.
And I had a couple of actor friends.
But it keeps you grounded.
It keeps very grounded. So I'm really thankful for having that kind of
But you said
experience.
You had a good time.
I had a good time.
What does that mean?
I just had a good time.
What does that mean? what does that mean?
Everything what comes with the cool things that come with being famous. And because of the parents I had, I wasn't into drugs. I wasn't even smoking weed. But I was able to, I'm in Latin Quarter.
Yes.
Too young.
Yes.
To be there.
Legendary hip hop club.
Man, yeah. I'm in the area. I'm in, Studio 54, and being able to, be in these spots, but again, not be a knucklehead, but to really be able to enjoy the access with and being able to enjoy all of that responsibly.
So girls are coming easily.
Oh, what? Oh yeah, but interestingly enough, also having a pretty good judgment of character early on.
Interesting.
So I wasn't with the chicken heads. I wasn't with the skeezers because I knew what that was about. So I was able to navigate. Now looking back at it, I'm pretty impressed at how I was able to navigate through all of that.
Because you must have had a lot of energy coming at you, girls throwing themselves at you, or just letting you know.
Yeah. And I think there's something with, and again, maybe the confidence of the show and the global impact on the show. I didn't feel the need to, hit everything that moved.
Interesting.
I didn't feel. I had access, so I was able to be. I could be meticulous about who I wanted to hang out with. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting, because a lot of young men would not be choosy in that situation.
That's why, as we talk about it now, and I look back, I'm like, wow, I'm impressed. I'm impressed at little old me.
I'm impressed. I'm like, I'm disappointed. I could have done so much more. What was I thinking?
When Entourage came out, right? One of my closest friends, Chris Hahn, he's one of my pre-Cosby friends. We went to junior high school together in LA. And when Entourage came out, and I watched Entourage, I remember calling him. I was like, dude, some best friend you are. We wasted my 20s. All this shit we could have been doing. Damn, man. And by that time we were in our 30s, so we were too old to do any of that shit then.
Right. That's hysterical. I want to talk about a couple moments from the show that just are unforgettable. I mean, like the Ray Charles Night and Day is, I think, maybe the moment that most stands out to a lot of people, because it's just such a beautiful moment, and it's kind of like that's the family that I wish that I lived in, where we get together and do shit like that. And it was just such a beautiful moment. Talk about that scene.
I don't remember a whole lot about that scene, particularly because I remember being nervous because we had to do this lip sync, and I remember just wanting to get it right. At least that's my recollection of it now, because as I'm talking and I'm thinking and I'm visualizing what that scene is, I was having a good time.
Yeah.
Like this shit was cool. So I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure what I can say about the scene, except that it was fun to shoot. And for me, it's still fun to watch, because I feel like I was looking kind of smooth coming down the stairs.
Yeah.
But when we see Keisha though,
oh my God,
baby,
oh my God,
baby, like that's
murdered it.
Yeah, that's great. That's good. I have very fond memories of the show, and when I watch the show now, I still feel like I'm proud to have been on it, but I also still enjoy it.
It seems to me from the outside that it was this great team, and if it was your episode or your scene, you did your thing.
Yeah.
Keisha would crush her scenes. Yeah. Tempest would get it. Lisa Bonet. I mean, Lisa Bonet had in love with her.
Yeah. We all
but Felicia would crush her scenes. Of course, Cosby was murdering his scene.
Yeah.
So did it feel like, we're a team and any of us can murder anything you put on that page?
I don't know if it was that conscious, but we all knew our part. Like we knew it was an ensemble. Like we knew it was Mr. Cosby's show, but we also knew that we were very important players.
Yeah.
On the show.
Yeah.
But he was also clear, at any time, any character could get hit by a bus. Right? So okay, we're on the #1 show and everything, but there was never we just all enjoyed it. So no one felt the need to be a dick, right? And I know for me, because Mr. Cosby didn't come to work with an ego, and he was the only one who had a career that warranted coming to work like that. If he didn't come to work like that, there was no need for no excuse for any of us to come to work.
So he set a good tone.
He really did.
Humility.
Yeah, and we got to a point where we would work. It typically takes 5 days to do a sitcom. We got to the point where we were doing it in 4.5 days. So we would tape on Thursday, and Thursday night after the taping, he would go get on this plane, either go to Tahoe or Vegas or Atlantic City. He'd go do stand-up Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and still be the first one at work on Monday.
Wow.
So even that kind of work ethic, because now he's on the #1 show in the world, so you can only imagine what he's now getting paid for his stand-up.
Sure.
So even then, it occurred to me, it's like, oh, okay, so when you're hot, that's the time when you should be busting your ass.
Mm-hmm.
And I got that. I got that early on, and his work ethic made a profound impact on me.
One of the other moments that stand out to me is, I believe you and Lisa's character Denise got into a car accident, and then you ended up meeting Stevie Wonder in the studio, which was like a mind-blowing episode.
Yeah.
And that must have been fun as hell.
That was great. He was 2 days late to work. And that's when I understood. Somebody explained to me, they were like, yeah, Stevie's, his sense of time.
No, it's different.
It's just, he's really on his own.
Well, actually, I talked to some of the guys who were engineering for him.
Okay.
And they were like, well, yes, because he doesn't see, he works on his own time. So you got to be ready to engineer for him at 3, 4, 5 a.m., whatever, because he's not working on the normal circadian rhythms because he doesn't see the sun.
Yeah.
Which is really, really interesting.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you can make that your life and make everyone
hey.
Adjust.
Who's gonna say, Stevie, you're too late. Yeah. We don't want you anymore. Like you will wait 2-3 days for Stevie Wonder.
And we did.
Yeah. But that was fun as hell.
It was. Yeah, and the whole and I love whenever Questlove talks about it, because I remember the synclavier and I remember the sampler and the jamming on the one, and I love how Quest talks about how that was a moment in hip hop.
Sure.
Because the next week everybody they got a Casio and they figured out how to do the sampling thing.
Sure.
And how much of an influence that had on hip hop.
I want to talk about the show a little bit more, but a moment in hip hop was you on Saturday Night Live with Run DMC as the fucking guests. And I remember sitting in the living room like, yo, Malcolm and Run is the black SNL, let's go. And it was an amazing episode. Spike Lee had a moment in that. He had a little short film in that. It was funny. Is it like, how exciting was that night, like creating that black SNL moment?
Yeah, that whole thing, when they told me, that I had the choice of who the musical act was going to be, I was like, Run DMC. And the highlight for me, though, like the show, the show was a show, but the highlight for me is I'm rehearsing my opening monologue. And my opening monologue was about learning this new dance that I couldn't quite get, and it was the WAP. And and in the part of the bit is Dana Carvey comes up and he's trying to show me how to do the WAP. But it was a real thing because I remember being at Latin Court. Like Latin Court is where I learned how to do the WAP. It took me like 3 weeks to get it. Okay. But so we were rehearsing and Run DMC come in. They come a little early, and they're sitting down, and we're doing my monologue, and the band starts playing the song that we're doing the WAP to, whatever, and the band stops. And Run goes, yo, D, you hear that? They playing motherfucking My Melody. It was Eric B. and Rakim's My Melody. I was like, that's the song I want to do. So the SNL band, Run DMC comes in and the SNL band is playing My Melody. And Run looks at me and he's like, you did that? And I was like, yeah. He gave me that look. I'm like 15 years old and Run, Joseph Simmons gives me the look like, yeah, I got the look of approval from Run. Yeah, that was.
I know exactly how you feel because the first feature I did for Rolling Stone was Run DMC, Down with the King. Before that, I'd been doing record reviews. They're like, you want to do, like, yeah, they're making a comeback. Fuck yeah. So I listened to all the records, came up with my questions. I remember we sat in a room, us and Jay, Run, D, and I just did a crazy interview with them. And just high energy, keeping it flowing, no amazing questions. And when it finished, Run stood up and he said, dope interview, and walked out of the room. I'm like, Run enjoyed interviewing me? Oh, right. Your kid died now. Right. I'm good.
Right, I'm man. Good. Yeah.
And he was the officiant at my wedding.
Oh, wow. Oh,
and he took it mad seriously because, before you get married, you go sit with the minister and he gives you the little, like, do this to stay married, don't do that, whatever. And I remember him and Justine talking about, like, what you want, like, look at the cover of Ebony. That's what's in the box.
Oh, wow.
Stay within the box.
Wow.
Like, just stay with each other, be good to each other. It was he took it very seriously.
That's
and it was amazing. It was amazing. But to get, because we loved him from when we were little, right? Like 12, 13, they started blowing up when we were 12. Yeah. So to get him to be like, yo, good job, like,
man.
What?
Yeah.
Because you can't understand how hot they were. It was no argument. Nobody didn't love Run DMC.
Yeah.
There was no controversy.
Well, there were some white people who didn't.
I'm not even talking about them.
But it was funny. Like when you think about it, that was the time where Run DMC were hard.
Oh yeah,
they were considered hard.
Oh my god,
right?
Oh my god, we're nervous about them doing the show because who knows what a gang element might show up. Oh my god.
Yeah. Little did we all know
it's gonna get way worse than that.
Man,
you think about how the experience of doing Cosby has transformed your life.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't. When I started acting, I was doing theater, and I was doing theater because my mother was always looking for things for me to do outside of just coming home from school and hanging out with my friends. So I was playing basketball, and one time, one year basketball season was over, my mother's friend suggested, this acting workshop in Centennial Park in Inglewood, California. And I go and I audition, I get in, and now I'm doing theater. And it's fun. Right, like it wasn't. I wasn't. My experience wasn't my parents grooming me to be an actor. I was, in this community theater to keep my mother's foot out of my ass. And then I ended up getting an agent because an agent came down to the theater and wanted to sign me. And even the first year she came down, my mom had gone back to school. She was in her last year of school, and she basically said to the agent, "Look, I'm in school. I don't have time to take him around to auditions. So thank you, but no thank you." The following year, I'm doing another play. Same agent, comes down and comes back, and she's like, "Okay, you're done with school. I want to sign your son. You have no excuse. I want to sign your son."
You must have been good if this agent was checking for you.
Yeah.
What were you doing that at that point people were like, "Yo, he's got something"?
I think it's, I'm not trying to be coy or when I say like that the it factor, like it's a real thing. Like how you can see kids and you can see kids whose light has been dimmed, and you see kids who have the light and have that thing. And I was one of those kids, in that whole group who had that thing.
That light.
Yeah. And I just enjoyed, I didn't know what I was doing, but I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed being on stage. I enjoyed, and all of that obviously came through, and even when I look at Cosby, I look at like those those first couple of seasons of Cosby, I didn't know what I was doing. I had to come from theater, but as an adult, I can look back at the show and understand what people saw in Theo and why people like Theo. And there was that freshness, there was that innocence, there was Theo was played by this kid who wasn't groomed to be an actor. So there was a different energy there. And when I look at that show and I go, wow, I was made to do that role.
I mean, there was a realness to Theo. There was a realness to the whole thing. It didn't seem like, I'm doing a sitcom and I say this line that nobody would actually say and get a laugh. Right. And, "Oh, you're so silly, Charlie." Yeah. Like, it felt very real.
Yeah.
I felt like, yo, this is my house. Like, I have one sister, but I'm like, yo, this seems like our house.
Yeah.
Right? And it seems real and yet aspirational.
Yes.
Like, you want to live
100%.
up to what they are doing.
Yeah.
And yet they are real.
Yeah.
But Theo was, he grows a lot. Because early on, he's a screw up.
Yeah.
Right? We love him. Yeah. Right? The parents love him, but they're kind of like, "Come on, let's go." And then, right, you kind of grow up, kind of become smoother, cooler.
Yeah.
Did you sprinkle that in, or they kind of,
as Malcolm did? No, I think the turning point for Theo was when they diagnosed him with dyslexia, and that was at the same time Ennis was diagnosed with dyslexia.
Interesting.
So really, that whole thing was based, on a real relationship between Mr. Cosby and Ennis. Like the whole regular people getting D's in school, that was that real experience.
And they were so happy. They were celebrating in this amazing way about like, yes, dyslexia. And you're like laughing with them, and at the same time you're like, this is ridiculous that they're celebrating, but we understand why they're celebrating, because now we have an understand. Now we have a reason. It's not your fault,
right? I'm not dumb,
right? And we can work this out. And nobody was talking about stuff like that on television.
No, not at all. People will still tell me that it was because of your show that I found out that I had dyslexia.
Deep.
Yeah. I mean, that show is influential in so many ways and on so many levels. I'm so proud of having been on that show. No, you can't call me Theo.
But you used to get Theo. You walk down the street and they would just
and I'd be like, "No, my name is Malcolm." So there's this thing. There's been this thing, like, how I don't like being associated with the Cosby Show, or I get an attitude if you call me Theo. And my thing was always, my name is Malcolm. I've got a really cool name because my name is actually Malcolm-Jamal. So I've got a cool name, but also Theo is not going. I'm going to be much more than Theo. So I'm not going to get caught up in that, and I don't want you to get caught up in that, because Theo is not going to be the end-all be-all for me. Because for me, at 15, 16 years old, to think that this show would be the height of my career, it was like, that's not what I want. So I don't want people to, well, even back then when I was signing autographs and people say, well, sign it Theo. And I'm like, no.
Interesting.
Because I'm not going to just be Theo. I'm going to do other things.
When you look back on it, because I know when I look back on things that I did and I'm like, oh, you made a mistake there, you should have done that better. Are you critical, or are you just like, wow, look at that young man?
Not anymore. I used to be critical.
Yeah.
But then I got to a point where I had finally become so far removed from the show that I got to the point where I was finally able to watch it and enjoy it as a viewer. And that was at the point where I was able to see, oh, now I see why people like Theo. Because we were doing it, I remember feeling like, this is corny. Theo's corny. And part of that had to do with going out in the world and being around haters and not understanding that they were haters, because that wasn't a word then. But when people, there were people who would be like, oh, you're America's favorite black white boy. It's like those kind of comments.
I never got Oreo from Theo.
No, I think it was just people who were just jealous or hating or whatever.
Vanessa, maybe a little, and that's no shade.
That's funny.
No shade, but like
That's
she
funny.
read a little bit more like, is she right? Just as a character, right?
I see what people. I see that.
You know what I'm saying?
I can see that. Yeah.
But like Denise is super black. I never thought Oreo. With
no,
Theo.
not at all. No, but I think that was just a kid's way of being a dick.
Sure.
And for me, even back then, I was, it's the thing that we all do. Like I talk about it on my record, right? You can be around, 10 people who love you, and it's the one person over there who doesn't, and that's the person we care about.
Oh, well, that's a performer, right? The one person who's not clapping, like, well, what did I do?
Yeah.
How can I get you to clap?
Yeah.
Right now, right? I go to colleges and do a speech. There's one person who seems to be, now I'm doing a whole speech to you. Like, what can I do to win you over? Because I already got them.
Yeah.
But like, we're like, I need everybody to love me. It can't be 99%. 99% is a failure.
Yeah. So growing up like that and paying attention to, those idiotic comments, I'd come back and be like, Theo should be cooler. Like, I want Theo to be cool. And I just felt he was corny. And like I said, I got to a point where I was far removed enough from the show where I was able to enjoy the show and go, no, he was great. That was, that was his charm. Like he didn't have to be, the cool bad boy.
No.
But during it, it's hard to see it when you're in the middle of it.
There's, I forget who it was. It might have been Russell Westbrook. Somebody wore in public a questionable shirt, right? And I posted it on Twitter, just the shirt. And I said, Gordon Gartrell. And I'm like, let's see what happens. And like everybody immediately, like, yes, absolutely. I'm like, I don't even need context. Just say that. And like, bam, everybody a certain age knowing. And, anytime Lisa was on screen, I think that like my eyes weren't working straight because I'm like, oh my God. But I do remember that scene very well. And that whole shirt moment was an epic scene. And you coming out like, with the arm, like, what the fuck? This shirt is so fucked up. It was amazing comedy.
He's like, well, tuck it in. It's tucked into my socks. I remember that. It was a great experience.
What do you think you learned about the essence of comedy doing that show?
Mr. Cosby was always about the truth. Go for the truth. Because if you go for the comedy, it looks like you're going for the comedy.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's always had a profound impact upon me in terms of my approach to comedy. And it's probably why I was never, farce comedies have never really done it for me. Back then or even now, because it's just a different level of comedy, like no shade or anything, but I think because of the school I came from, where it was about, let's go for the honesty, because you're going to find, you can find honesty in you can find comedy in any situation. Just go for the honesty.
What do you love about acting?
The opportunity to get inside someone else's head.
To become somebody else.
To be somebody else. I enjoy that. But there are actors who are, much better than me and much stronger than me. But a lot of those actors need to be other people.
Okay.
Right? So I believe we live in a dysfunctional society, right? We're all dysfunctional individuals. And the thing that artists have is their art can be their scapegoat.
Okay.
So for a lot of creatives, that dysfunction fuels their craft. Right? I mean, Michael, Prince,
sure,
De Niro, Pacino.
Sure.
I don't have that.
Okay.
But I think those really amazing artists, I think a lot of them, they have that. They need that art. They need their craft to be the scapegoat from whatever in their life.
The art allows them to escape their life.
Yeah, and so it fuels their creativity.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I don't have that. I love it, but it's not like I need that experience because I need to escape whatever the fuck is happening here. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
you liked your home life.
Yeah.
You like your current life.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to escape my life. I enjoy stepping into someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
But I don't have trauma that I'm running away
exactly.
from.
Yeah. 100%.
So what does that mean? Are you saying that separates you from others who are like, I need this?
No, I've always wondered, wow, I don't know if I'll ever make the heat of greatness like Pacino, De Niro, Fishburne, because I don't know if I necessarily have that.
Interesting.
Which I don't, and that's just my own, that's my own thing. Like the thing I love about The Resident is, I play, one of the top cardiothoracic surgeons in the country, and Dr. Austin is arrogant, he's brash, he's a dick, he doesn't care what you think about him, he's going to tell you the truth, and however it lands upon you, that's on you, and he doesn't give a fuck what people think about him. He is the guy I don't allow myself to be in real life, right? So I love, and it's one of my, it's probably my most favorite character right now, and it's people who know my body of work, it's their favorite character that I've done. But it's great to be able to step into, this role and like not give a fuck about what people think about me. Because as an artist, we want to be in that place where we don't want to care what people think about us. But the success of our art greatly depends upon what people think about us.
I mean, you have to be aware of what the audience is getting from you, right? Like I think it's the dream of the artist to just be like, I just do my art, I don't worry about the audience.
Yeah.
Of course you worry about the audience. Of course you want them to communicate, to catch what you're putting out. So I have to constantly be thinking like, if I do this, how will that be read?
Right, yes, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're in conversation with the audience.
Yeah. Yeah, if I say this might this might turn somebody, off, or this person might not like me if I say this. So to be able to step into this character's shoes, who that's not even a thought. That thought never crosses his mind what someone thinks of him.
Yeah.
So I get to go in and I get to be a dick, and I get to do all the things that I don't do.
What do you hate about acting?
The politics.
Of getting the role, or once you have the role?
All of it. All of it.
What does that mean, the politics?
So this is an industry where, let's take the audition process. You come in and you have to bring your A game.
Oh my God.
Knowing that you may not get this role based on things that have nothing to do with your A game. You might be too tall, might be too short, might be too dark, might be too light. They may decide they want to go Hispanic, or they want to go woman. Or you may remind the casting director of their brother-in-law. Right? So you know that, but you still have to come in and bring your A game every single time. And your A game gets rejected day after day after day. As much as I have worked, I've been fortunate.
Tons of shows.
Right. I've got a great track record, right?
Yeah.
I'm fortunate and blessed enough to work as much as I've worked my career. I probably have an 85 to 90% rejection rate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's about normal for a strong working actor.
Yeah, so not daily, but 90% of the time I go into an audition, bring my A game, and I don't get it, not based on my A game.
It's not a meritocracy. We're not looking for the best actor.
Right? Theoretically, we are. Theoretically, but
if you auditioned, if you tried out for the Lakers, we are looking for the best shooting guard we can get.
Yeah.
If you try out for, I don't know what, Star Trek 17,
right?
We're not looking for the best actor.
Right.
We're looking for somebody who fits into this group, but
I won't make it that blanket of a statement. Sure, the idea is you want the best actor, but this best actor who we really like, just not right for what we need for this role.
Now, how much does Theo fit into that the casting director or the director or whatever may say, love Malcolm, but I don't want him to walk in and the audience think, oh, there's Theo?
I'm sure that had worked against me. I don't think that's a concern now, but in my years, Cosby was over. We wrapped in '93, so I'm sure along my journey that kept me from getting roles. I'm sure that's kept me from even being able to get an audition.
Sure,
but yeah, that's the one of the cons of being fortunate enough to have been on a highly successful, recognizable show.
William Shatner and others who are fortunate enough to be on the gigantic shows of our time talk about that. Like, well, then it has an effect in other ways.
Yeah.
So you were in Suits for 2 years.
Yeah, man.
Did you work with Meghan Markle?
Yeah.
Yeah, what was that like?
It was cool. We didn't really have scenes together, so I'd see her, and she was really nice, really cool. My best friend, I was talking about Chris, he's a stage manager. He used to stage manage Deal or No Deal. And Megan used to be on Deal or No Deal. He's had more interaction with her than I did, but she was always cool.
Let me ask you something. Did you know she was black?
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, I got black dar, so we see it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I can see where a lot of people be like, I didn't know.
Yeah. The great thing is that she knew.
She
knows. Yeah.
No, she seems like an amazing chick. Malcolm and Eddie was some epic shit, because Eddie Griffin is just an extraordinary talent. I hung out with him a little bit after Paul Mooney's wake.
Okay.
And he's just amazing and hysterical and just lightning and electric. And he told a story there about him and Mooney doing a show, and the promoters didn't want to pay him. And he was like, you get the car, I'll go to the promoter and get the money from him and run out the back door. Blah, 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 blah. It was this amazing story. He's extraordinary.
That's funny. Yeah, he's got a lot of good stories.
I mean, like, just working with him, I mean, it seems like just turn the camera on and shit's gonna happen. It'll be good.
Yeah. We it's funny. We hated each other.
What?
We did.
When? You were doing the show?
During the show.
What? Why did you hate each other?
We had, we came from two different schools of comedy.
Okay.
Right? And
will you be actor, stand-up, or philosophical?
Bill Cosby, Richard Pryor.
Okay, yep, definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
And we just had different, I had come from, 8 years of working under Mr. Cosby's wing at NBC at, an environment where Mr. Cosby made sure everyone was uber aware of the images of black people that we're putting across the airwaves.
Yeah.
And I watched him from season 1 to season 8 run that show. I watched him deal with writers. All of the stereotypical things that you never saw on that show was not because the writers were not writing them. The writers were writing them.
Because you had white writers.
Yeah. And every now and then we have a black writer.
But mostly
white. Yeah.
But it was Cosby who was like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Because it was his show.
Is there an example of something you remember of, like, they threw out something at you guys?
I can't remember specifically, but just overall, he had to say to them almost every week, no, that is not this show.
I mean,
that is not
from the beginning. And my mom held this. It was so important to her that initially he was supposed to be a janitor.
Yeah,
and he was like, no, I want to be a doctor.
His wife.
Right, Camille was like,
yeah, she was like,
right?
yeah.
So now we're aspirational,
yeah,
right? It's not another sort of show where the black people are working class.
Exactly,
we are upper class. It's aspirational,
and also, if you remember that what set that show apart is the comedy was not predicated upon being black.
Right, it was a story.
Black sitcoms,
yes,
the humor is predicated upon being black.
Yes.
So that invites the stereotypes.
So that's the Malcolm vision.
Yeah.
What's Eddie?
Well, remember UPN. Right. So UPN, everything UPN stood for.
Network.
Right. You pick a nigga.
They said that too.
Yeah. United Plantation Network, like it was a bunch of them.
I didn't hear that one.
Yeah, man. So my thing was, okay, they know where I come from. They know I come from a history making show that shows that black people we don't have to be stereotypical to be funny.
Right.
So I'm thinking, okay, I know how that show runs. They know where I come from, so we're trying to do something different. We're not trying to do the whole stereotypical thing, and Eddie and I, we seem to agree that that's what we were. We're on the same page on that. But once we started doing the show, I found myself fighting, writers, producers, studio, network, because they were trying to do the UPN brand, and that's not what I was there for. And no one really cared about what I cared about in terms of but what are we doing? Like we're not trying to be stereotypical with our humor. So we fought with writers, constantly. Eddie was like, nigga, let's just be funny. His actual words. So that was just kind of our. I'm trying to be funny, man. I'm trying to get my nigga on. Like, come on.
And you're like, no, let's put out a certain image that's helpful.
But nobody cared about that. The network didn't care about it, right? So
you're alone holding up this flag.
Yeah. I was Don Quixote.
And Eddie is leading the other side of like, let's just Let's just get it done.
And they're like, oh, well, he's funny one. So then they started writing to him. Right? They started writing to so I say that so there were just things we didn't, and we were both young. We were both young, we both thought we were the shit. And in our own worlds we were the shit.
Yeah.
But the thing that so I tell that whole story, but what's really important about me telling that story is every tape night, no matter what kind of argument we had during the day, before we went out in front of that audience, we would get together, we would hold hands, and we would pray. Okay. So we could have been fighting all day, but now it's time to do the show. Okay, come on. We'd hold hands, we'd pray.
Just the two.
We'd go do the yeah, and we'd go do the show.
But that didn't solve all the problems.
No,
when
it
you
didn't.
get on the set, you still are like.
But now so we spent the week going through all that. But now we're in front of the audience. We made whatever changes we made. Now it's time to to do the show and be a united front. And even and there were times so there are also times where even though we may have disagreed on a lot, and there were certain things that we felt like we needed to have. There were times where we were a united front against the writers.
See, it's interesting because I know I've done shows where I felt like my philosophy and vision is at odds with somebody else who is here with me.
Yeah.
And you can kumbaya before the thing, but when it finishes and you're like, that is not exactly the way I think it should have gone. And so you walk away frustrated. And we've talked about this, so I can't keep telling you the same thing. And then especially if the ratings aren't where you need them to be, and you're like, okay, the ship is slowly sinking. And this could be because you're not doing it right. Now you're like, well, you're fucking up my paycheck. So is that starting to come into it?
Yeah, 100%. And even though we were at odds, what we both understood is we get to 100 episodes, we're going to have a sweet ass syndication deal. So that was also part of it. We were like, hey, fuck however we feel about one another.
Gotta make it work.
We're gonna get this money. We're gonna get this 100 episodes. Ultimately, they cut us at 88. Because they were, and Eddie was on his thing. So they were tired. They were tired of me fighting with the writers about their writing, and then they were tired of Eddie's shenanigans.
Which means
whatever. I mean, just Eddie is a nut, and I mean that in
I imagine the brothers showing up late. The brothers showing
all of that,
whatever,
all of that.
And you're like, I'm on time.
Like fuck, right.
So that's a.
So it was a miserable experience.
Oh no!
And I have my version. Eddie has his version. I'm sure he's told countless
Have you
several different. Me and Eddie, we're cool as fuck now.
But so you had a mountaintop moment at some point.
You know what? Social media is like there are a lot of fucked up things about social media, but there are also a lot of good things about social media. Somehow me and Eddie ended up, we DM all the time.
Okay.
And somehow, we were, and we're probably first DMing about on some bullshit, some surface shit, whatever. Yeah. And then after a while, we just we got into like a real like grown man back and forth. And we, talked about, sometimes, during that time, and we both apologized for, where we were, because we, like I said, we were both young, we were both, in our minds, we were both the shit, and so I guess I could say Instagram DM reconciled Malcolm and Eddie. So, but we're grown men now, and we've had journeys, and
you're not tied to each other anymore, so it's a little easier.
Yeah, sure.
So when you talk about getting to 100, are you still getting Cosby Show checks?
Yeah, but so it's different. 100 episodes for syndication.
Yeah.
When you have back end, when you have part ownership of the show, that's when the syndication deals, you're getting a percentage of that syndication deals.
Yeah.
And Eddie and I both had ownership. We had part ownership of the show, so we had back end. So that syndication deal or those syndication deals that happened over and over, we would have gotten a whole lot of money. With Cosby, none of us had back end.
Right.
Well, when we did our deals, we knew nothing about back end, and even if we had, we didn't have any leverage to negotiate back end.
Right.
So residuals are different from points.
Right. Right.
So yeah, our residuals now though, like I don't know, probably 12 years ago, I got a first season residual check for $64 for an episode.
12 years ago?
Yeah. So who knows what that is?
64 for the whole first season?
No. For an episode. For an episode.
$64 for one episode?
For one episode. Yeah. So at this point, so there was a time where you're talking 8 years. So that lump sum of money that you would get from residuals was some really nice padding. Didn't mean you didn't have to work for the rest of your life, but it was a nice padding. But the thing about residuals, what people may not know is every time an episode airs, you get a percentage of what your original paycheck was. Okay. And that show was, is aired 1 million times. So every time it airs, the check. So that's the $64 check for that episode. The next time that episode aired, the next check would have been a percentage of that.
Okay.
So
little something.
It's not what people think it is. Like when you think
nice
about
to have a check roll in for I didn't do anything today, and I still got something.
But then it gets to a point where mailing the check out costs more than what the check is.
Yeah, no, I know. Oh, God, Seinfeld did a whole thing on that, right? He had a whole bunch of $2 checks. He's like, my hand hurts. I'm signing these stupid, worthless checks. What the fuck?
That's hilarious. But yeah, so me and Ed are cool. That was an experience. But that for me is what kicked off me playing bass. Because I was like, okay, I'm caring too much about this show. I need to have something else that I'm passionate about, and something I won't turn into a career, because acting started out as a career, directing started out as a career. I need to do something that I will not turn into a career.
Why not? Why something that won't become a career?
Because I think at the time I didn't want to. I felt like I needed a hobby.
Okay.
So if I could use bass as a hobby and go practice scales to a metronome in my dressing room to be my zen, then I'll never.
And it's just private.
Yeah.
It won't get wrecked by an industry.
Yeah, and I'll never record a CD. I'll never start a band.
Why bass and not guitar?
Because at the time, I thought bass would be easier. At the time, I thought.
I can see it now. He's like, now that I'm in it.
I thought,
anything could be easy if you're not trying to be great at it. To be great at the bass or anything is hard.
Yeah, but so what I realized is I don't really know how to have a hobby. Right? Because then the bass turned into, I ended up starting a band, right? Then I started doing shows, but every time I was doing a show, I'd come out of pocket like $200 or $300, because once I paid the band, once I paid the videographer, once I had spent money on print and advertising, I was coming out of pocket $200 or $300 every gig. So I was like, I need to sell a CD after the gig to kind of make up for some of that. But I had no original music. We were doing covers. Like we were doing Love Rears Its Ugly Head and Equinox, like a blues tune. So I was like, I need original material. And because I was already doing poetry, but not doing poetry with my band, because I want the poetry and the music to be separate, I decided, well, I need to do poetry with my band. I need to write music and do poetry over my music. Now I've got original music and I can sell a CD. And once I infused the poetry with my band, then that's when like shit took off, and I was gigging all the time. I was doing jazz festivals, jazz cruises, put out some more albums. Got a Grammy in 2015.
What's the hardest part of the bass? Of being good at it?
I mean, there's groove, there's timing, there's harmonic knowledge, there's melodic knowledge. Like the whole thing, like I figure with bass, because with bass, like piano players, they need to know chords, and guitar players need to know chords. Well, if I play bass, all I have to do is just play like the one note, play the root. Yeah. Right, exactly. Once I started playing, I was like, oh, just playing like any noob can do that. Like if I'm trying to be a bass player, I have to study the language of music.
Yes.
And I also knew that I wanted to be able to play with good musicians, because I knew actors who played and had bands, and people were just like, they were like, So I was like, well, I need to study the language of music so I could have respect for musicians, and I could play with good musicians who want to play with me because they understand that I take it seriously. So that's when I got into the nuts and bolts and the minutia of what bass playing is, and I was like, oh, yeah, I need to know theory. I need to know how chords are constructed. I need to know what else to play other than the root. Then it became this really exciting journey that I'm still on.
Sure, of course. You'll learn forever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was listening to Bootsy Collins this morning. I love his music. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of bassists?
Larry Graham, Marcus Miller, Michelle Ndekiocello. And what's funny, when I was a kid, the first record I stole from my mother's record collection was Graham Central Station. When I was like 11, I was the latchkey. We were part of the latchkey generation, latchkey kid generation.
Gen X, hell yeah.
So my mom would be at work. I'd come home, and before I would do like my homework or chores, I'd put on the two records. I'd put on The Many Facets of Roger, Roger Troutman, and Luther Vandross's Never Too Much album. And I would play that album, right? And it wasn't until I got interested in bass and started playing bass and learned about Marcus Miller. And then I found out that Marcus Miller had played on Never Too Much, that whole album, and then found out that Marcus Miller played on Tutu and played with Miles. And I've been listening to Marcus Miller my whole life, and had no idea that I would end up being a bass player. So I often say that ultimately bass chose me.
Sure.
Because that was the thing that had gravitated
you
to
were
my whole life.
already gravitating toward great bass from the beginning.
And had no idea that I would end up, because I didn't start playing bass till Malcolm and Eddie, right?
Okay.
So I had no idea that, that I would end up playing the instruments that.
Because a lot of times the bass is it's subtle. I mean, we know the vocalist, we know the keyboardist, the guitarist is all up in this.
Yeah.
The drummer, sometimes you really have to listen for what the bass is doing. It's a little more of a subtle tone on top of or underneath things.
Yeah.
Rather than in your face. So it's interesting you went past all the people who are like, look at me. Like, no, him.
Yeah. But here's the thing. It's kind of like my life. Like, I'm a Leo, right? So Leos are known for, wanting to be out there and wanting the attention. But then there's some Leos who like, I can get the attention if I want, right? So let's go back to the teenage Malcolm on this #1 show. Yeah, I could be out there. I could fuck all these chicks if I want, but I'm a chill. Bass is the same kind of temperament because you can go out there and you can be the lead. Like Marcus he's the lead. Victor Wooten, like you can do that when you choose to, but you can just play. You play the low. You play support. Let everybody else, get their thing off. And really, what people don't necessarily know is bass is really what controls the bass dictates the harmonic function of a tune. Sting says it best: a chord isn't a chord until I play the root.
Interesting.
If that makes sense.
Well, for those of us who aren't speaking of music, help us understand better.
So, I'm talking without getting into music theory and everything. Like, let's take a chord, like a C major chord. A C major chord is 3 notes.
Okay.
Right. And in order, C, E, and G is a C major chord.
Okay.
C being the root. So when everything about chords, you name the chord by its root. But the way music works, that C chord, if you put a different note, like if you put an A to the left of that C chord, now it's become an A minor chord.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how music works. So you could be playing the C chord all day long, but if I put another root on it, it becomes another chord.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a certain command that the bass player has that nobody even knows. There's so much command and so much control that the bass player has, and he's playing the low. People don't know.
You're educating me, because I always thought of the bass as, I mean, obviously he is or she is the rhythm section, right? Working with the drummer.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think about a harmonic relationship, because I'm like, so they're right, the singer, the guitarist, the keyboardist, they're doing the harmony. The drummer and the bassist are doing the rhythm, but you're like, no, it's a little bit more.
The bass is the instrument that does both. He's got to keep the rhythmic timing, and he's also he's the bottom. The bass is the foundation of harmony. So it's the bass player who's got to control both. Anybody else, any other instrument, can play a wrong note and you're fine. Any other instrument can be off, timing can be off, and you're fine. If the bass player's rhythm is off, everybody knows it. If the bass player hits a wrong note, everybody knows it. So the bass function is, it can be argued that it's the most important function in the music, in the live bass setting. So this instrument that I thought was the easiest instrument is the instrument that has the most responsibility.
But isn't that like life? You thought you were taking the easy path, and it was the hardest one?
Yeah.
Isn't that just the way that shit goes?
Yeah. And that's the beauty of life.
I ask everybody who comes on this show, what does being black mean to you? And it's interesting to address that question with you, because if you do a montage of what people think about that, you would end up in that montage. If we go to the Black Smithsonian Museum in DC, like, we're going to see your face, right? So just curious, like, what does being black mean to you?
Wow, that's an awesome question. For me personally, given my journey, given my path, given my career, given what I'm known for, given everything that my father instilled in me long before Cosby, there is, and what I take on as an artist, as a creative, there is a certain responsibility that being black means for me, in terms of being in a world, being in a society where black people are systematically made to feel second class, that the universe has given me a platform and a voice to, in whatever way I can, combat that. To be able to even be an example, if you will, for young black kids or peers, when we were young, or even peers now as adults, being able to show that we don't have to conform or submit to society's conditioning. There is so to me, that's a responsibility that I feel greatly. My dad set me up because he named me after Malcolm X and Ahmad-Jamal. During my summer vacations as a kid, my dad he had this stick book called Great American Negroes. And he had these, the chapters on Richard, Langston, Mary McLeod, and he used to make me write these book reports during my summer vacations. And I hated it. Like, I'm trying to play. The fuck? And it wasn't until I got older that I understood what he was doing. And I think it registered for me. The light bulb went off. I was in 5th grade. I had this book my dad gave me, Poems on the Life and Death of Malcolm X. And I have the book on my desk in 5th grade, and these kids would kind of tease me and like, oh, somebody wrote a book about you, ha, ha, ha. And I'm in 5th grade, and I realize, these kids don't know who Malcolm X is. And if they're reading poems, they're not reading poems as sophisticated as what I'm reading. So I understood, what my father was instilling in me. And then once I'm doing Cosby, and now I'm a couple of years in, and Cosby is this thing, this
epic
beacon
phenomenon,
and has this impact, this global impact on black people. Yep. And I remember being 15, and so the responsibility that comes with that, and by the time I'm talking, I'm going to schools to talk to kids, I'm going to churches, I'm doing public speaking, and I was 15, and I called my dad. I was like, "You set me up," and he laughed. He said, "You're damn right."
Wow.
Wow. Okay. And that's something that I've always taken seriously. So when I think about like little black boy, like for me it was, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali, like these men who risked their careers for what they believed in. Like you change your name to something else, you stand, like I don't want to hear nothing about gangster. Ali was fucking gangster.
Hell yeah.
So growing up, with those guys being heroes, and I remember being a young kid looking up to these men. So I constantly think about young kids who look up to me. So what Cosby Show gave me was this platform to do this work that my father set me up to do. He had no idea that I would have this platform, but he set me up to be able to do what I do. So that to me is, I know it's a long ass answer.
No, it's a beautiful
to
answer.
Your question.
It's a beautiful answer, and I feel it. I feel it in terms of what I've done. When I started doing TV news, I'm like, we're not going to make jokes. We're not going to be silly because there aren't that many black people out here. Right. So, like, be serious. And I get it. I get this a lot when I fly for some reason. The older generation is like, I see you, and something to the effect of, you're making us look good. And when I get that from somebody, I'm like, I know you're old enough to remember Max Robinson or the folks who were on TV when there were very, very few black people on TV. Yeah, and you're coming from that, and you're like, you're making us look good. And I'm like, I'm fulfilling the responsibility. Yes. And that whole ensemble, but you were fulfilling that responsibility and taking it to another level. Yeah. Right? Because you were definitely using television in a culturally revolutionary way. Yeah. Right? I mean, when we think about the 80s, you think about Cosby like, yo, we're going to a beautiful black place. Right? Right? I mean, it was revolutionary for black people for black people. Like, we're seeing ourselves in this two income, two degreed household. Everybody is trying to be smart. The goal is to go to college. You know, I mean, like, Good Times was great, but this was like, yo, now we're up here. We're beyond the Jeffersons. Right? And we didn't just, he got it because he got hit. Like, you guys, they worked for degrees, and now they're raising up the next generation.
And then you got a generation of kids who want to go to black colleges because of what they saw. When my third album, when I put my third album out in 2015, I could not get any press. I could not book any press on my record unless I agreed to answer at least one question about Bill Cosby. So I was like, okay, I know how to work around that. So I did an interview for AP. We spent 25 minutes talking about my career, music. It was a wonderful interview. And then the very last question, the woman said, do you think this Cosby controversy has tarnished the legacy of the Cosby Show? And I said, well, of course it has, because now they've taken it off the air. Before, when we would have stereotypical images out there, we always had the Cosby Show to hold juxtaposed to that. But now we don't have that. The next day, and that's AP, right? So the next day, every headline was Malcolm-Jamal Warner says the Cosby legacy has been tarnished. Right, but that's what everybody went with. And I was like, and then I saw Keisha on TV. She did, I don't know what talk show it was, and somebody asked her a similar question, and she said, no, the legacy of that show can never be tarnished. She said, because so many kids went to black colleges because of that school, because of that show. So many people, black kids grew up to have loving families because of that show. She was like, the impact of that show can never be tarnished.
Can we watch it the same way that we used to?
Some people can. Some people can't watch it at all. I understand. Like, I watch with my daughter, and I understand why people, can't watch it. And even those of us who can watch it, sure, we know what's going on, but what's happening in this show is timeless.
Sure.
And its impact is timeless.
Yes.
And I watched my daughter watch the show, and it's so surreal because she's even laughing. It resonates with her. And to the point where it's not even about me. Like, she knows it's me. She's like, oh, that's Papa, but where's Rudy?
Of course.
She wants to see Olivia. And for a while, she used to think the show was called Rudy's Family.
Of course.
So the impact of the show itself is timeless. It's everlasting. you know. So just still being a part of that legacy, and whether the show is on or not, we can see in the world what the impact it's had on us as a culture, globally. And I love that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it sits in my soul. I know it sits in my mother's soul as a beautiful reflection of who we are and who we could be.
Yeah.
And you talk about black colleges, and but you went to NYU, or Theo went to NYU.
Yeah.
And that the final show was about him graduating from NYU. So education was so critical that the finale is based around he graduated.
Yeah.
He started from he can't get good grades, right? We learn he's got this, and now he's graduating from, because this is the epic moment in all of our lives. That was a beautiful, and Different World meant a lot to me too, because I was applying to college or thinking, I think either I was thinking about it or I was applying when it started airing. So seeing a vision of college that was fun and fun, it was like, okay, let's do this. What's up?
Yeah. Like education became cool.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's that kind of thing when I think about, again, when we go back to, you know, what does being black mean to me, right? And the responsibility of that, and looking at, thinking about young black boys looking up to, you know, me or whoever. No, fuck it, we're talking about me. So me, and that's one of the reasons why, like, my album, Hiding in Plain View, is so important, and I would dare say that it's one of the most important albums to come out in 2022.
Okay.
And I say that because, of course, that's how I feel about my work. But on the record, I have Dr. Daniel Black. He's an award-winning novelist. He's the assistant professor of African American Studies at Clark Atlanta University. And the album, so I have him all throughout the album. He's just dropping knowledge, you know, I have him interspersed through the whole album. And the album is so the first track on the album, Dr. Black is talking, and he says, the thing about a black boy is you don't necessarily want to beat a black boy. What you want to do is you want to love him so fiercely. You want to love him so divinely that your disappointment will kill him.
Wow.
You want him to adore you so much that the one thing he never wants to do is disappoint you. That's how the album starts out.
Deep.
Right? So there's so much about this album. Like, this album became, it was more black as fuck as I had expected, and as I set out to do. But it's all, you know, it's me. I'm being me.
Is that how you parent that idea?
Yeah. Because, you know, we all came up from a generation where
I got,
you know, you got, but, you know, I
spanked a bunch of times.
I know more than my parents knew.
Yes.
As parents.
And Dr. Poussaint, Alvin Poussaint, who was part of the Cosby Show family, was critical in spreading that information of, like, this is why we shouldn't use corporal punishment. And you'll still catch an argument in the black community about that. I'll bring it up on Twitter every couple of years. We shouldn't spank our kids. There's a bunch of people who are like, I absolutely agree. I never touched my kids. I agree. I hit my kid once. I felt horrible. I never did it again. Then the other side comes. Spare the child. What is it? Spoil
the child. Spare the rod. Spoil the child.
Spare the rod. Spoil the child. How better me beat you than you end up in prison? That's always like, how is it that if I don't beat the child, then the child's going to end up in prison? Some people think this is a direct. I don't know how this is the only two paths. Either beat the child or he goes to prison.
And how many beat children are in prison?
And how many times does anyone mess up at work and their boss beats them?
Right.
That never happens. How many?
Yeah.
That never happens.
Yeah, yeah. And I make the running joke sometimes, like, my daughter, like, do something frustrating. They're like, watch, one day she gonna get it. She gonna get it.
You said that?
No, I say it to my wife. Like,
Yeah.
I joke to my wife, like,
Yeah.
one day, watch, one day it's gonna happen. And I'm halfway joking, but whatever type of moment, like I'm halfway joking, but I'm kind of like, it might happen one day. And my wife just said, okay, try it, and let's see how you feel afterwards.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. See, she's using that on you.
Yeah.
I will be disappointed in you.
No,
and you'll be disappointed in yourself.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I was like, I can't even make that joke now. She took the power of that joke away.
Oh.
Because I think about them, like, I can't see, beating my child. You're not a child. It's a child.
It's traumatizing.
And we don't realize our own trauma behind that.
No,
Yeah.
you are 2 or 3 times her size.
Exactly.
My father was, God rest his soul, way bigger than me when I was 4 or 5. And I screwed up whatever I did, and he would grab me and he would whack me on the butt. And he meant to hurt, right? That's what we did in the 70s.
Yeah.
And it was traumatizing.
Yeah.
You know what he used to do? Because sometimes I would maybe I said or did something that had hurt or annoyed my mother in the afternoon, right? So she's like, okay, when your father comes home, you're going to get it. So I'm sitting there waiting for the beat.
Yes.
And then he pulls it to the garage. So you hear the garage door going, oh, here it comes. And the garage door was loud.
Oh, the anxiety.
And then it goes down. Oh, here it comes. And then she got there, and he did. Blah, 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 blah. He come in all mad. You did what? You said what? Oh, bam, bam. And so there was all this whole emotional prelude to the beating. And all that, traumatic. Like, and I mean, they didn't realize, we didn't have the information at that time.
Yeah.
So I don't blame them for dealing with the
neither.
information they had at that time. I don't judge them.
Yeah.
But it's traumatizing.
Yeah. So just what I was saying about the record, and again about the responsibility and what have you, and I think the importance of this record, like this record has an opportunity for us to re-examine our approach to raising black boys, which will have an impact on how black boys relate to each other. Absolutely. And how they relate to black girls.
Of course.
Which then has an impact on how black men relate to each other and black women. And there's this self-healing that the album that I really explore on the album. And I tell people that this album, Hiding in Plain View, is for us. I say us. I say it's for black boys, it's for black men, it's for black people, it's for non-black people who have the foresight enough to see that our self-healing is an invitation for them to explore their own necessary healing. Like that's how seriously I take the responsibility of being an artist, and like I said, doing the work that my father
started.
Yeah.
What's the title mean? Hiding in Plain View.
There's a poem on the album. That's the title track, Hiding in Plain View, and it's about vulnerability and how we all will hide parts of us that we think someone might not like. So we all do this dance where we all wear these masks, right? To mask these certain parts that we don't think people, they might not like. And it says, you know, vulnerability can be a scary thing even when you're on the mend. Black boys boast bravado not to seem broken, and often so do black men.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. God, you know, Brene Brown said something about vulnerability that blew my mind, that you have to be strong to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I had never really realized that.
Yeah.
I was like, vulnerability means you're showing weakness. Yes, but you have to be strong enough to be willing to show the weakness.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we get so beat upon by society that we're like, well, I'm not showing weakness. I only show strength, right?
And to the point, one of the things Dr. Black talks about on this album is how vulnerability is what's missing in the black father-son relationship. Right? Because we're still in survival mode. So it's like, in survival mode, there's no room for vulnerability because we have to focus on these things here. Yes. So we walk through life not wanting to be vulnerable. We walk through life with this bravado because we feel like, you know, showing vulnerability is weak. It's so I really feel like you know, this album invites another way of looking at how we you know, how, like I said, how we raise black boys. He does this whole thing about hip hop, where he proposes that hip hop is a cry from wounded youth.
Interesting.
Boys who have been abandoned by black fathers and black men. And though the messages don't come out in, you know, fuck you, dad, but there's this unexpressed rage.
Oh, that's all throughout hip-hop.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. And oftentimes, these black boys don't even know what they're enraged about. It's a I think it's an important listen.
Yo, I could talk to you all day.
No doubt, yeah, man.
Congrats on the album.
Yo, thank you,
Congrats on the career. Thank you so much. Such an honor.
Thank you very much.
To sit and talk with you. You've been part of my life for so
long.
No doubt. It's crazy. Thank you so much.
Yo, word. Thank you.
Thank you.